King's birthday between the Pies and the Demons after the Dees get absolutely thrashed by Fremantle by 100 points. Some would say there's a few Ds in the headlights coming into this game. Let's get right into the injury list first before we get into the crux of the game itself. Mainly pre-existing injuries. Thankfully, no new injuries from that game against the Doggies. So we've got De Goey, Tom Mitchell, Jamie Elliott, Brody Myercheck, Joe Richards, all players to be out post-bye, along with Ned Long with that calf. We've also got Josh Carmichael with ongoing concussion protocols. Hoskin Elliott to test. Reef McInnes should be available. McStay post-bye match simulation. Hopefully we can find a couple games for McStay towards the back end of the home and away season. For the D's, as far as pre-existing injuries are concerned, they've got Jake Lever, who is out for another 2 to 3 weeks with a knee concern, and then Spargo is listed as a to be continued for his Achilles. And then new injuries coming out of the game against the Dockers. Van Rooyen didn't make it to the starting line of that game with an adductor injury. However, it said he will be available for the game against the Pies on Monday. And then Lockie Hunter has done another calf, which is set for a stint for Lockie for around the 4 to 6 week mark, having had these recurring soft tissue calf injuries in the preseason. So we won't see Lockie Hunter, but we were likely to see someone like Jacob Van Rooyen at the starting line for this game. Well, last time we met was that qualifying final last year, and what a game it was. A lot of narratives came out of it for all the right reasons and for all the wrong reasons. We were completely dominated. Collingwood ended up winning that qualifying final 60 to 53, a 7-point margin, of course. It's just another game where Collingwood were statistically obliterated, but of course Collingwood ended up winning the most important stat that will ring true to the end of time, and that's the scoreboard at the end of the game. The stat categories that were troubling the Pies in that game was mainly to do with the contested ball being minus 14 for the game. However, after quarter time, the D's were plus 24 for the last 3 quarters. So that outside of that first quarter, the Pies were absolutely killed in the contested ball realm. We were minus 32 for inside 50s. However, the D's could only take 9 marks for those inside 50s, which is not the return you're looking for when you have that high volume of inside 50s. And despite Collingwood being minus 20 in the inside 50 count, the Pies still managed to take 8 marks inside 50 compared to the D's. And the D's scored from 10% of their entries. Conversely, the Pies scored from 24% of their inside 50 entries. And that is ultimately the end of the game. That's the difference. The Pies, despite all the statistical dominance in that game, the Pies managed to muster up a 25-point lead going into the final quarter. And the D's also smashed the Pies in that last quarter, having plus 13 inside 50s and kicking 3 goals to Collingwood's 0 goals, 2 behinds. Some of the positives for Collingwood was, of course, their tackles being plus 14 and plus 24 intercept marks. I feel like in every review or preview, whatever it may be, I always talk about holding up the fortress in the back line in the defensive half, and Collingwood do that so well when their experienced bunch are playing in the team. They get the lead they need and they just hold on for all dear life, and that was the theme last season. We're starting to change that a bit more. We're a lot more competitive with our contested ball, inside 50, so we're adding important tricks up our sleeve this season, but I guess the issue has been our availability at the moment. And the best ability is what? Availability. And that's what it is. In that qualifying final fixture, some of the Pies performers were Isaac Quaynor, 17 touches, 4 intercept marks, 9 intercept possessions. Has he been able to replicate this type of form that he had last year into this season? Not just yet, but as I've mentioned before, sometimes you're a victim of the role you play in the team, and Isaac Quaynor is a defend first player, and sometimes if the ball isn't falling his way for an intercept, or if it's not into his hands to dispose of the ball, then so be it, as long as he does what he needs to do. And I feel like he's doing that to a good enough level. Mr. Jack Crisp, or should I say Mr. Finals, had 23 touches, 11 contested possessions, 1 goal. He was outstanding for that entire final series. Can't hype him up enough for those games he had, those 3 games. And then Bobby Dazzler, 13 touches, 3 goals from 4 shots, 8 contested possessions, which is also a career high for Bobby Hill. So, like I said, the finals brings out the best of these players, the best out of Bobby Hill. We're not going to get that in a regular home and away season. Very rarely, unless it seldom somehow replicates a finals-like intensity game. And those typically happen towards the latter end of the season, or an Anzac Day, or maybe even a King's Birthday clash. And his accuracy last year, I think he was one of the best in the league, sitting at around 60-something odd percent mark. He's actually below 50% this year, so we'd like to see that hopefully lift. I'm not too sure what that is to do with, maybe more difficult shots, but he's playing well. I would have liked to see him kick more goals in that Doggies game. If you go into that game saying, hey, Bobby Hill, how many goals do you, what's the benchmark going into the game? And if you say, oh, I'd probably want 2 goals from him, and then he comes out of the game, 14 disposals, 1 goal, Lachie Schultz kicks 3. Had Bobby Hill found a way to kick a couple more goals, the result's probably different. Darcy Moore was outstanding, game high 11 intercepts, 2 intercept marks and 2 contested marks as well. So he's what embodies holding up the fortress, holding against the siege that the Demons bestowed upon Collingwood in that qualifying final. So yeah, that's what Darcy's capable of, and he does it so well. And finally, Hoskin Elliott, I'll give him his flowers here. 20 touches, 19 kicks, and an equal game high 4 intercept marks along with Isaac Quaynor. So Mr. Fix-It does a job in a massive finals game that not many people will probably recall how big a game Hoskin Elliott had. I didn't until I revisited the stats and the highlights. But wow, he did have a really good game, and more than just a Mr. Fix-It type of role. 4 intercept marks is nothing short of incredible in a finals, or not a final, it was a finals game. Nothing short of incredible in a qualifying final game that sees you into the prelim if you win. Who were the Dees performers from that qualifying final? Max Gawn, 27 touches, 10 inside 50s, 22 contested possessions, which was an equal second career high for Max Gawn. 8 ground ball gets, 4 contested marks, 7 score involvements, 8 coaches' votes, the most in the game. Should I keep going? The stats are endless when it comes to this man. He's a freak of nature. He collects the ball like he's a midfielder, intercepts the ball like a defender, and somehow manages to find the goal in between the 2 big sticks. So he's going to be a big job for Cameron. We'll save that for the matchups towards the end, but moving on to the midfield, which is going to be a big focal point for the Pies this weekend, or on Monday actually. Clayton Oliver, 31 touches, 10 inside 50s, 16 contested possessions, 11 ground ball gets, and 11 clearances, which was a game high, and 10 tackles. So these players bring the heat. And yes, it's not a qualifying final on Monday, but it's the King's Birthday clash where the Dees just got absolutely humbled by a young Fremantle side and got destroyed in the midfield, which is Melbourne's Onewood. Yes, it's Fremantle. I think they are the best clearance team in the side, but it's like the young versus the old, and the old really got shown how they got big dogged by the younger players in that midfield against the Dockers. Big Track had 29 touches, 16 contested possessions, also 10 ground ball gets, 7 score involvement. So he's always going to be a problem. He's been playing a lot, or a bit more forward this season compared to last year, if my memory serves me correctly. I guess it sort of ebbs and flows in periods throughout the year based on the need. So we'll see where Petrarca ends up for the majority of this game, but I could only imagine that it would be predominantly in the midfield, given how shown up they were on the weekend against the Dockers. Finally, last 2 players, Jack Bowie had 19 touches, 18 contested possessions, 9 intercepts, 3 intercept marks, and then Mr. Stephen May, 17 touches at 88% disposal efficiency, 9 intercept possessions, and 2 intercept marks. So those are the players who historically have done well against the Pies, so keep an eye on them as a point of extra interest going into the game on Monday. I've got some really alarming stats that I would love to share with you guys regarding the Dees. It's the key team stats in the last 5 matches. They're a shell of themselves compared to last season as of right now. They're bottom 4 for contested possession differential, which is minus 8.4. They were plus 10 last year, which had them first in the league in that stat. And it's an important stat going into the finals, and they killed us in that stat in that qualifying final last year. They're last in the league for ground ball gets, minus 12, whereas last season they were third, where they were plus 4, which is another important stat which you want to be winning if you want to consider yourself a premiership fancy for the most part. They're bottom 4 for clearances, so as I said, they got shown up in particularly against the Fremantle side, so they're going to want to bounce back immediately against this younger, more inexperienced Collingwood side with midfielders who are still finding their way at AFL level. Lockie Sullivan, Finlay McRae. You've got Josh Dacos who's rolling through. Bo McCreary is untried and then he's still learning. Patrick Lipinski was thrown into there a little bit against the Doggies. So Demons really need to try and take advantage of the instability in Collingwood's midfield in particular at the moment. The Dees are also 12th for inside 50s differential. Remember in that qualifying final, I said they were plus 30 odd. They're currently 13th for inside 50 differential right now. Last season they were first, being plus 8. And right now they're the third side who have conceded the most from turnover this year, being 56 points a game. Last year they were conceding 41 points, which is the second least in the league. So literally a complete flip from top to bottom. So they've shat the bed. I don't know what it is. Are they lacking energy, desire? We don't know. But rest assured, King's birthday, you're going to get close to the best from this type of side who are a proud team, a proud club, and they've overcome adversities, particularly early on this year where everyone had written them off given the backstory, the back page stories regarding Clayton Oliver, Joel Smith and the likes of these players in the off-season. So really look forward to, well, not me personally as a Collingwood fan, but as a general fan, look forward to what narrative is written in coming out of this game, because there's two sides to the story. Collingwood inexperience, Dees with the adversities of trying to overcome what was close to a 100-point loss last week against the Dockers. And speaking of that game, let's dive into that a little bit. Fremantle 22-9, 141, which was the largest total conceded in Simon Goodwood's tenure at the Dees thus far. And the Dees scored 7-7, 49, 33 scoring shots to 17 from complete rampage on the Dees. They were minus 42 in contested possessions, minus 24 in ground ball gets, minus 31 in inside 50s, minus 25 in clearances, which is the equal 20th worst differential in clearances in AFL history, minus 25. So it just goes to show how bad of a performance it was by the Dees engine room and how good the Dockers midfield was. They were also destroyed in every score source. They were minus 41 from stoppages, minus 44 from turnovers, minus 26 from defensive half. Jack Viney is always gallant in defeat, 24 disposals, 1 goal, 3 goal assists, 7 tackles, and Gawn was brave, 23 disposals, 11 contested possessions and 1 goal. So those players, you're always going to get your best regardless of the outcome. But as for the rest of the team, they're going to have a hard look at themselves going into this game. All right. Typically, my favorite part of the match previews is the fringe players / selection talk. So let's talk about Ash Johnson. Well, I think he's out and I think Kruger is in. He kicked 3 goals against Western Bulldogs in that curtain raiser game for the VFL. I was surprised he wasn't included in that game against the Doggies at AFL level, but maybe it was just a matter of getting some more confidence at the AFL level and moreover, more confidence in his body, which would have been the biggest important factor, probably determining whether he plays VFL or AFL against the Dogs. But now there's no way around it. He has to play AFL level this week. I just don't think you can play an out of form, out of confidence Ash Johnson. It just doesn't work. You can't fake confidence and you can't fake form. And unfortunately, Ash Johnson is lacking that in a big way. I don't know what the future holds for someone like Ash Johnson. But yeah, with Kruger in, I'd like to see someone like Billy Frampton switch back to the defence line. I think he's done well there and well enough to hold that position. Finlay McRae probably has to be out, just hasn't been able to transfer his VFL form to AFL level. I'm not saying it's all but over for him. Maybe it is at Collingwood. Luckily enough for Finlay, there are a lot of injuries right now, so he may still somewhat have a position in the team over the next few weeks. Who knows? But there's not a lot of time left for Finlay McRae at Collingwood at AFL level. So who do we bring in for Finlay McRae? Well, this will tie into the next player, but I'm thinking Dimatia or TJ. Tujath was the emergency last week against the Doggies, so they both can play off the halfback flank, which means what we could do is we swing still side bottom forward potentially. That could be the case if Fly sees fit. And then maybe Howe forward as well. There's the possibilities are endless with the amount of swingmen we have in our team, the versatility, which is handy in these times where we really are struggling with numbers. I think we only have like a handful of players outside of the AFL team to choose to play at AFL level. Ned Long, the recruit through the mid-season draft, has a calf. Illaru Smith probably not ready. That leaves Nathan Kruger, TJ, and Harry Dimatia And then you got Reef McInnes as well, of course, and Hoskin Elliott. So those are the only other AFL listed players off the top of my head that would be available for selection. So you look at that, Finlay McRae, maybe, yeah, it could be a Dimity, it could be a TJ, it could be a Reef McInnes as well. That probably seems like the more obvious one. Jack Bytel, probably out. His disposal use was poor, considering he was playing on the wing. I think he had around the 50 to 60% disposal efficiency mark, which is not what you need from a winger. You probably want it closer to 70%. And he only had 8 touches, and that's not a lot considering he started the game and finished the game. So not ideal for Jack. I don't know if he's up to AFL level. I don't want to make that judgment just yet. I forgot also Oscar Allen or Ed Allen could be available, but I don't know if he's ready for AFL level. But you could probably switch Markov onto a wing or Noble onto a wing. Like I said, the fortunate thing for Collingwood is we have a lot of players that can play multiple positions, and that's really crucial in these times of needs. What would I like to see from Collingwood in particular? Well, we talked about Jeremy Howard swinging forward along with Nathan Kruger. Billy Frampton goes down back. So then you've got Darcy Moore and Billy Frampton taking the 2 best defenders, and Charlie Dean has to play the 3rd key tall backman. He has limited aerial capacity. So how does that match up against the Melbourne Demons? Where you're looking at players like Bailey Fritsch, maybe Tom McDonald swings forward. He played backline last week. They're not going to be overly tall, I wouldn't imagine. Maybe Charlie Dean gets a look at maybe Van Rooyen if he's available. And then you got Tom McDonald and Fritsch with Frampton and Darcy Moore, which is also a little bit suspect. So I'll leave that to the coaches and let them figure that one out. But give us a desirable matchup, a fair matchup for Charlie Dean, not a 6'9" Sam Darcy who just towers over him. That's not fair. Interestingly enough, I think the Pies need to work on their defensive half transition. It was our pillar last year. We were number 1 for defensive half transition. Right now, we're second last in the league, only 1 above West Coast Eagles, which is bemusing. Yeah, we've improved from stoppages and turnovers, but we're losing that defensive half transition profile, and I feel like you really do need that as a team to break open games and get the goals you need. So that's concerning, but it's early. It's not early days. We're nearly halfway through the season, but let's just earmark that and keep an eye on it. The other thing is I want to see John Noble return to form after a down game. I know it's just the one game. 18 disposals at around 66% or 55% efficiency for a halfback flanker. You want that around the 80% mark. Bailey Dale from the Doggies sits around that for the year. So it wasn't his greatest game. He had some direct turnovers that led to a goal, but we'll put that behind us. We know how good of a season John Noble has had, and we'll call that a glitch in the matrix. Sadie as well, 21 touches at 61% efficiency. Being that halfback flanker, it's just not good enough. And maybe he holds that spot, or can he swing forward? Because we know he has the ability to find the goals. Lastly, Josh Dacos, 47% disposal efficiency, and Lipinski, who are supposed to be our best ball users off the wing. Granted, they played more in the middle, but yeah, look, don't get me wrong, Josh Dacos played well and he kicked goals, but I feel like there were parts to his game that he could have done better with, as to the same with Patrick Lipinski. Between those 4 players being side bottom, John Noble, Lipinski, and Josh Dacos, arguably, at least in our top 6 best ball users in the team, they combined for a total 25 clangers between them, which is just too much for your best ball users in your team. I kindly ask that our bottom 6 keep battling. Whoever it is that slides in and fills a role, hopefully they can do a job and help Collingwood get this much needed 4 points, because we're aiming for 8 points out of our last 3 games. So we lose against the Doggies, so now we're hoping that we can go at least 2 from 2 here to stay intact with the top 4 battle and not flirt with falling out of the 8 post-bye. What are the crucial matchups for this game? Well, for me, there are none obvious and none more enticing than the one that stands between Darcy Cameron and Max Gawn. I just think that's such a enthralling matchup. Why? I rate them as great marking ruckmen. I've mentioned many times, if you guys watch the live shows, if you watch the previews, the reviews, I've mentioned how well Darcy Cameron does in the marking domain as a ruckman. He's the number 1 intercept marking and contested marking ruckman in the league, and he comes up no greater challenge than Max Gawn, who collects the ball, like I said, like a midfielder, kicks goals, and can also take a great contested grab. Cameron actually had a career high 51 hitouts against Tim English, where I think he just edged Tim English in that game on that Friday night. So this could make more of a case for Darcy Cameron and all Australian contention if he can get one over Max Gawn in this game, where the Demons look vulnerable overall. The midfield battle is going to be a massive one. Oliver, Petrarca, Viney, all big-bodied, hard-working midfielders with that special talent in Petrarca. Throw Gawn in there. You're going to ask for a big shift from players like Bo McCreary and Jack Chris being largely bigger bodies than what we have available in there compared to a Lockie Sullivan, Josh Dacos and Nick Dacos. We're going to need some work from those bigger lads to help them out. Can we take advantage of Melbourne's somewhat often never seen before vulnerable defense? We know how well they track as a side historically in the last 3, 4, 5 years as a defensive side. Conceding 141 points being the most Goodwin has conceded in his tenure at the Dees is concerning, and maybe talks to the importance of what it means when Jake Lever's not available for the Dees. Like, he averages 3.1 intercept marks, which would be up there for one of the best intercept marking defenders in the league right now. And they just look like a completely different team. Stephen May has no one to bitch and nag to on the field when something goes wrong. He's looking left and right. He's got no one to talk to, so that probably plays a role. They're like the parents in the team that always bicker, but whatever they do, it works in the end. And after the game, they can kiss and hug and it's all good. Similar to a rocky marriage, I guess. So, yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting one. Tom McDonald played backline along with May and Tomlinson. And I think McDonald swung forward late in that game to kick a goal or two. So I'm not too sure what their defensive makeup looks like right now, but it is concerning. And another player we've got to be concerned about going into the game is Christian Salem running off the half-back flank. He suffered quite a serious hamstring injury in round 5, which saw him miss 6 weeks. And I always keep an eye on these damaging halfback flankers, as you too should in the modern AFL era, the way that the game is played. I've targeted Mitchell Hinch, I've targeted Bailey Dale. They've both done well against Collingwood. Now it's someone like Christian Salem. We don't want him to get off the shackles. He's averaging close to 30 disposals since his return in the last 3 games, predominantly playing off the halfback flank. So earmark that, and there's another vested interest for you guys to look into throughout the course of that game. Now guys, as I said, what does this mean for the Pies? Well, top 4 will still be available. We don't want to be falling out of the reaches of the top 8 post-bye. Our fixture stands as post-bye. Well, before the bye we got North, we got Gold Coast Suns away, and we know how well they've been performing, and they look like a different team under Damien Hardwick. They have a different aura. They don't look vulnerable. They're suspect away, but the fact of the matter is Collingwood are playing them at Metricon Stadium. We've got the Bombers at the G, who are 3rd on the ladder right now, and they're completely revivified this year. Ben Mackay's worked the treat. Jake Stringer's back in form. Zach Merritt's leading from the front, running 2 ways. Peter Wright's doing his thing. Carl Langford's still there. Jordan Riley's just come back, so that's a problem within itself. We've got Geelong at the G after that. The Hawks at the G, our bogey team, who are arguably, if you don't look at the ladder, the Hawks are the form side of the comp right now, whether you like it or not. And then we've got a lessly likened Tigers, but we know teams play their grand finals against Collingwood, and Collingwood versus Richmond's always the big matchup. And then we got Carlton, we know about them. Sydney at the SCG, haven't had much luck against them at the SCG, most notably the prelim final, and then that home and away game as well in that year in 2022. And then the Lions at the G, and then the Demons to finish the year off. So that's quite a stretch of teams that we'll be versing who are serious contenders and always going to trouble us. So it's not a desirable fixture, but that's why it's so important to bank wins now while we don't have availability. And at the end of the day, we don't know when some of these players are coming back. Jamie Elliott, there's talks that he's not even going to play this season. Career might be over. Now it's 6 to 8 weeks. De Gaulle is dealing with an abdominal, Tom Mitchell foot, like a Pendlebury bicep strain. So it's just, what do you do? And how do you know these players are going to come back as per the predicted timeline? Like, these soft tissue injuries are unpredictable. So we need a win and just play what we've got in front of us with what we have internally available. And for the Dees, it's just been an inspiring win for them to bounce back from a 100-point loss against the Dockers. And what better team to do it against in a fixture like King's Birthday against Collingwood. And they're, like I said, they're a proud club. They have a great sense of pride. So this isn't going to be a game they come into and no one here or no one in the AFL is thinking, yeah, the Dees will lose by 10 goals because they lost by 100 points the following week, the previous week. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you guys tomorrow for the extended teams on the Moving the Magnet show, which is starting at 7 p.m. So come say g'day there. I think Caleb will be featuring. And then also we have the pre-game and the post-game show on Monday. The pre-game show, we'll talk about the game. We'll get involved with the chat. And then the post-game show, we'll get some fan cams going and have people share their thoughts live on stream. So stick around for that, guys. See ya.